Tonight's meeting of the Arlington School Committee is being conducted in person and through the use of Zoom, and thanks to the very hard work of people in the superintendent's office and ACMi. This meeting is being simultaneously broadcast on ACMi, and the meeting is being recorded. Because we have members participating remotely or will have, we do have one already, all votes are required to be taken by roll call. Persons wishing to access the meeting using Zoom may find information on how to do so on the town's website. The posted agenda and supporting materials for this meeting are also available on the town's website. Due to open meeting law restrictions, the committee cannot participate in or access Zoom's chat function. While everyone is welcome to observe this meeting, active remote participation requires advance notice. All participants are asked to activate their camera and shall provide their full name in the interest of developing a record of the meeting. We have no one signed up for public comment tonight, so we can go straight to our AEA representative, Julie Keys.
Hi, not much. Everyone's just counting down. We're at end of the year trips, field days, fun stuff with the kids, finals at the high school, and we're all just looking forward to summer.
I saw a lot of pictures of Addison graduation on Facebook today.
It went incredibly well. It had to be held indoors, and kudos to the entire Addison team for making that, moving a couple thousand parents, family members through the building seamlessly. It really went well.
Great, thank you. Our student representative is not here, so we will go straight to our first presentation, which is the Math Pathways Task Force. Ms. Bronner.
You good?
I'm great.
Okay.
I expected to be on a little bit later. It's funny, it's so quick tonight.
After all that.
Short and sweet, right? So I'm here to present an update and recommendations that were developed through the Math Pathways Planning Task Force. So we can start right in. So the presentation will include an overview of who was on the task force, what was the goal of the task force, and what was the process that we used to get to the recommendations that will be presented. And then we'll follow up with next steps from that list of recommendations, because it's going to feel pretty meaty. So what are we going to do from those? And then open it up for questions. So the task force was made up of a combination of staff members in the district, and then community members from a variety of experiences and background. And then the one person that was part of the task force for a number of meetings who's not listed is a consultant that we worked with out of California, Kentaro Iwasaki. So I neglected to add him to the list, so I apologize for that error. In terms of the charge and what we were tasked with doing, the goal of the task force was to develop recommendations for next steps that we can take in order to ensure that our pathways, our math course pathways, provide students with opportunities to access courses that align with their learning goals, that we align with existing district commitments to MTSS, that students have access to rigorous content and can build foundational knowledge in their core content. And lastly, that will be sustainable and efficient enough for our system to support it both financially, contractually, and structurally. So the task force met for a total of 12 and a half hours over the course of a number of meetings, October through April. We grounded our work. We started with talking a little bit about what is deeper learning and what are some of our goals for our students, and grounded it in the strategic plan, defining what is deeper learning through curiosity, mastery, focus, and real-world problem solving to sort of just anchor our work in the mindset. Several meetings were spent in smaller working groups so that we can dig in and do a deeper analysis in these 4 key areas, looking at our current pathways and then looking at practices and pathways outside of APS, so local districts like Lexington, Newton, Winchester, and then even beyond, and looking at some other districts nationally that we know have also been working towards either detracking or de-leveling or trying around some other initiatives. Another group was looking at what are the math experiences of students, staff, families, so basically any stakeholder in the community and the district. What does the data say? What is in terms of in district, what are we noticing about student success within the pathways that we currently offer? And then what does the research say related to tracking, leveling, and acceleration? So the working groups started with a template in order to gather information, and they collaborated as groups over multiple meetings. We would meet together as a larger group, then separate out either to smaller groups in person or breakout rooms when we were meeting remotely. They shared the individual groups shared findings with the larger team after a couple meetings to get feedback. Those groups went back together and they refined their recommendations based off of that feedback and based off of the full task force discussion and clarifying questions that were asked. And then our last meeting was presenting those final recommendations to Dr. Ford Walker and myself. So the next two slides cover just the actual recommendations. And then beyond that, I'll go over each one individually and talk a little bit about some of the things that we have been doing, that we're doing now, and thinking about to what we could start next school year. So the first is to conduct a K-5 program audit. And so we're wording it this way because it's more than just a curriculum audit, and I'll get into that in a future slide. We want to look at our tracking and leveling practices more deeply in grades 7 and 8. We want to look at the measures we use to determine student readiness and learning needs, specifically around making informed placement decisions. The other recommendations too were around providing more equitable access, both to support and intervention and enrichment outside core instruction, but also to our advanced math courses and levels. And then identifying the short and long-term professional development and the planning needs for our teachers, our staff, and our leaders. Establishing consistent communication with family and caregivers around our course offerings, pathway changes, and our vision for math learners. And then lastly, collecting regular feedback from staff, students, and families about their experiences to inform our decisions and how we make adjustments. So the first one is to do an audit of our programming in K-5 at our elementary level. This would include both a curriculum review, but also really digging into thinking about and looking at how does our current programming meet the needs of all of our learners, and grounding that work and that lens through our strategic plan in Initiative 1.1, and thinking about what are areas of strength and what are areas for growth? And then how do we support alignment through our middle school programming? When students come out of elementary school, are they set up to move through middle school in a way where they continue building their success? And are our values aligned, K-5, then up through 6-8? In terms of tracking, the task force spent a lot of time looking at tracking and leveling practices in local districts, in our district, thinking about what is it we do, what are the current, what's the current process by which students select or are placed in courses, and then what does the research say about tracking and leveling? And this was an area where the task force really said, we need to gather some more information and think about what does Arlington do right now? What does our historical data tell us about students when they're tracked in 7th grade? Or when they're leveled in high school, in order to think about what might be our future moves or future decisions around that, if any. So we want to establish an internal committee made up of staff from all levels, an elementary, middle school, high school, and district-based staff to gather data, both quantitative data, assessment data, but also that qualitative data that you get by visiting classrooms, talking to teachers, talking to students, to get a much fuller picture around the implications of tracking students in 7th grade, and thinking about what does that align with what we value for our students? Is it meeting our students' needs, or is there something we need to think about in terms of an adjustment to that process and where we track students? In addition to that, thinking about how do we assess students to know what they're ready for and guide them in making those informed decisions around choosing levels of courses in high school, or making choices around which 7th grade math course they want to take that sets them on this trajectory to either get to calculus or need to take advantage of a different opportunity to get to calculus. And then lastly, there's been a lot of work that the task force did, that the group did, a small group did, on gathering information about local districts. So we want to continue to build on that information and even get into some schools and talk to staff and students and really get a better sense of the experience of students for any tracking changes that they have done. And thinking about what might we take with us into Arlington, or what do we feel like we might want to take from what they're doing and apply it here.
Ms. Bronner, can you speak a little bit about why internal and what some of the perhaps challenges were with the committees?
So
Primarily external.
the task force was made up of both community members and staff members. And one of the challenges is when we're looking at trajectories of specific students to see outcomes, unless data is aggregated in a way that students are not identifiable, it can be difficult to really dig into some of the trends that we see. And then additionally, internally, especially with having staff from different levels, to really get to know what our programming is. And thinking about, these are teachers that work with the students every day, and getting their more direct feedback and input and ideas, and having them be part of the process is so important if we're looking to do anything different. Another recommendation, so some of these recommendations are going to overlap in ways that the tracking and leveling, one of the things we want to do is look at how do we assess students to measure their readiness. But the task force was also looking beyond tracking in terms of like, what data are we collecting around students? What measures are we using to determine their readiness for a particular course or their learning needs? This is K-12. And right now in K-5, we have a really robust assessment process that the math coaches and the math interventionists have worked really hard on over the last couple of years to put together to assess students both doing tier one assessments, and then students identified for math intervention, continuing to assess and collect data on those students to look at their progress, and thinking about when students are ready to phase out of intervention and moving back into tier one and getting support maybe in a different way that's not in a setting where they're pulled into a smaller group. So K-5, we have something that's well established, but we want to, as part of that audit, we want to look at that and think about how are things scored, how is data collected, how is it interpreted, who's using it to make decisions, and then thinking about sources of bias. But doing those three pieces outside of just K-5, looking at expanding it to 6-8. What assessments do we collect? How do we use that data? And how is our interpretation or our scoring of it normed among a team?
I'm sorry, I'm going to keep doing this to you.
That's fine.
My understanding is that they've heard about the enrichment block that they're working on, I forget exactly what it's called, the E&E block.
E&E block, yep.
How does this work dovetail with some of what they're doing and trying at Gibbs next year that's new because of the elimination of the
So it like I said, it overlaps. So part of this, so it helps inform, like I said, K-5, it's informing the intervention decisions for students that they want to offer small group intervention to, but then looking at 6-8, or specifically, 6-8, knowing that we still offer math support to students, and then at Gibbs offering that essentials and enrichment block. How are we making decisions around where we guide students in terms of, do we think that math essentials would be recommended versus math enrichment, or do we think students would be better suited for I don't want to speak to the other content areas, but just knowing that they offer an essentials component in the other core content areas in world language and the enrichment. So thinking about what measures are we using to say that we think that this particular student could really benefit by being in a math essentials, where normally before that they might have only had access to a math support class in their schedule, and if it didn't fit in their schedule, then where are they getting that level of support that is not necessarily a high need, but still a need. So the idea of the essentials block is to reach more students and giving them some opportunities to strengthen their knowledge and continue their knowledge so that they are successful at grade level.
I'm gonna piggyback here because I when I read the report, and my name is on the task force, but unfortunately I was actually unable to make any of the meetings, so I shouldn't get any credit for the many hours of work that you all put in, but it also means I have more questions than I might had I been in the room. It sounds like there's a lot of work being done about what we're going to do next year, but there are sixth graders entering the Gibbs who in prior years would have had an opportunity possibly to take 6A. And it's not clear to me what, like if there's, we've heard about essentials and enrichment and there is going to be this new thing, but how it's going to be thought about who accesses the enrichment part of that. And it seems like a lot of this is really important, good work, but part of the goal of this year's task force was to have something, I thought, a little more concrete in place for the kids for whom the first big change is happening. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Or if there's a better time.
Can I point of order a little bit?
Yeah.
Like I was prompting to make sure that
Okay.
you had the full picture. I'm happy to stop doing that. We can go back.
We
and
can.
forth. It's totally up to you.
No,
Totally up to
I
you.
only said it because you brought.
Yeah.
Because Ms. Barner talked about the essentials and just now, and so I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we got the enrichment part as well.
I do think that is the concrete response to making sure we have something more flexible for providing extension, enrichment, or backup and support. And it's also a new approach to intervention. But you can
Yeah, I mean,
we
was.
can keep going. You can speak to that later if it's later in the
No,
slides.
I mean, that is part of the answer, is offering enrichment to students so that in the prior years, the bypassing was very much a gatekeeper and very limiting. And one way to measure whether students would be ready for something more than grade level, something outside grade level. And part of the work of the enrichment is to think about how can we give more students access to a space where they can, like if they really love math and want to do more math, a space to do that, to dig into deeper problems, but doing it in a way where they're staying within the sphere of the sixth grade content, but expanding their ability to problem solve and be creative thinkers within that sphere without necessarily teaching seventh grade skills, or content, which they would then get next year. So they'd be doubling up on it essentially. And allowing them the flexibility, even in that enrichment space, if they have skills beyond sixth grade, giving them the freedom to use those skills without teaching them, letting them be creative and try something that they know that maybe they haven't learned in sixth grade, that they've learned outside of school, and not confining them to just saying, you have to just live in this sixth grade world. But students who haven't had an opportunity to maybe learn outside of school and still really want to dig in, and their learning goals, or they want to learn more math and do more problem solving and do more thinking that goes deeper than what happens in their Math 6 Tier 1 classroom. So that part of it is an equity piece of opening up the door for more students to experience that. And this next year is the first year of this E&E block. And so there's some things that we don't know yet. We can't necessarily predict. But as we move through the year, the goal is to to get feedback. That's part of the recommendation, is to continue to get more regular feedback from students and teachers and families about any of these changes or the work that's been happening to inform the future decisions. So the data gathering and thinking about the measures, that particular recommendation does inform a lot of the other work, the other recommendations. So the task force really wanted to make sure that students who need support or intervention or are looking for enrichment outside that core instruction are able to access it in some way. And so, like we just said at Gibbs, they're launching the Essentials and Enrichment block to take place of the previous WIN block. Audison launched or piloted a math enrichment elective, a 7th grade version and an 8th grade version. And that's been successful, and they're gonna keep using that as an elective for next year for students. Again, having a space if they feel like they want to do more math than what they're doing inside their tier 1 classroom, they have an opportunity to do that. In terms of the support piece, both at Gibbs and at Audison, there's math support teachers at every grade level, and up through this year, students have accessed that by having that in their schedule. So they would have that as part of a class in their schedule. So essentially having a second math class 2 out of the 4 days. But the administrators at both schools and support teachers and myself are looking to think about ways to offer that, a model that's similar to elementary, and that it's flexible with having some students are scheduled in, but having space and time in the support teacher's schedule to do some push in, to go into a classroom and support students in different ways. And then thinking about evaluating these options as part of that tracking and leveling committee, saying like, what do these look like? Is there an additional something that we need to do for the enrichment? Is there an additional something to do to continue to offer students who need it the space for support and intervention? So in addition to, sorry, I have my notes here too to make sure I say certain things. In addition to the intervention, support, and enrichment, thinking about beyond middle school, having more equitable access to those advanced math courses. And so right now, students are able to choose whether they want to do, in terms of their level, they can do that A level, that college prep level, or do honors level. Students who are ready for geometry in 9th grade have the ability to double up in Algebra 2, which supports them accelerating and getting to those advanced math courses. And then they can, rising juniors and seniors have the option to apply for the summer pre-calculus option, which is an external course that they find. But then it allows them to move from Algebra 2 to then calculus the following year. And the goal of both of those was ensuring that students could get to calculus by the time they graduate. But then a lot of students are looking to do calculus by junior year to open up their schedule to take additional math electives or additional science electives. And really round out their the courses that they're taking before they graduate. So part of our thinking for next year is we've been doing these for a couple of years now, and looking at them and saying, what are the outcomes for the students who have participated? What has the experience been like? And just reviewing them for accessibility, who's participating and who's still not, that might want to take advantage of some offering to get to calculus. Are these, while we have these offerings, are they limiting for some students? Which students? And then how can we support them in moving forward to meet their own learning goals before they graduate? Thinking about the teachers and staff in terms of, especially around those essentials and then the enrichment offerings in 6 through 8, collecting feedback from teachers around what are some things that they feel like they need in terms of planning, what is some professional learning they feel like would be of value to support the work they're doing with students in those different spaces, especially outside of core content. And then thinking ahead to access to advanced math work for students. What might our high school teachers feel like they need to support that for students? So first, collecting that information from staff and teachers and administrators, and then using that to identify our professional development plan and some of our scheduling needs for the following year. I feel like I had something extra to say on this. I did. So the task force, I think someone coined it as a parent university. Some way where families, students, and caregivers can get more regular access to our math programming. I live in the space, daily. So for me, it's hard to remember, like, what is it that outside that space that families and students need to know? And working with administrators to say, okay, how are we going to support the community in understanding, or families and students understanding, what are their options? How can they make decisions when there's a point to make a decision? What does that look like? And just what do we value in student learning in the district? What do we value in our math learners? So the K-5 math mornings over the last couple of years has really broadened to more schools and more grades, and they're very well attended. Lots of parents come to those, and the feedback is really positive from parents, teachers, and students. So continuing with those this next year. We held a couple middle school math nights. My own reflection on that is to start holding those earlier in the school year, before families and students are inundated with all the information about registration and course offerings. Start planting those seeds a little bit earlier, so that they can think about, like, well, what are their questions, and they have time to ask those questions and to get them answered. There were families that attended more than one night and did give feedback that they appreciated that they had an opportunity to go to multiple nights, because they were able to digest the information more and come up with the questions that they didn't know that they needed to know. And so over the fall, working with the Gibbs administration and Audison administration to think about, like, what's the timing for those? What would work best for those particular buildings? And then just making sure we record our sessions for anybody who's not able to attend and have those posted. And then I think this is the last one. Yeah, lastly, collecting feedback from staff, students, and families. And again, I think this particular piece occurs in a number of the recommendations to really inform decisions and adjustments. And then also surfacing questions that maybe we didn't know we needed to ask also. So we need to figure out, like, how do we want to collect feedback? What feedback specifically do we want to collect? So in the prior slide, asking staff, like, what would be of value to them in terms of their own learning and their own planning, for instance. And then using this to inform our ongoing work in that middle school pathways committee, any of the curriculum work we're doing with teachers, and then looking at our assessments and measures. How is that going? And so getting feedback in all of those areas is essential to continuing the work. So that was a lot. Those are a lot of recommendations. There's a lot of pieces. In terms of thinking about next steps and kind of consolidating those down, planning for our K-5 program audit. So sort of thinking about who is doing it, who's on that team, when are we doing it, and, like, the how, like, what does that look like? Establishing our internal team to look at our tracking and leveling in grades 7 through 8. And we've already reached out to some staff members to garner interest or gauge interest in that for next year. And then thinking about how are we collecting data from students? What is that data? Thinking about both quantitative and qualitative. How do we collect it? Where do we organize it? When we sit down to review it, what does that look like? Who's reviewing it? And then just think about those mechanisms for feedback in addition to the student data, like just that feedback from families, staff, and students. And then lastly, like I said, map out those math nights or information sessions. additional questions.
Can I just add a little context that I maybe should have opened with? So I just want to remind everybody kind of a little bit of where we've been. We made the decision early last year that we weren't going to do the assessment into sixth for the bypass. That course that students would take actually bypassed grade 6 entirely content. And students went straight into 7A, which essentially meant that they learned 3 years of content in a single year. And one of the concerns that has come out of a lot of discussion over the last several years was that accessing then that pathway was pretty much impossible for every other student. That disproportionately that pathway was only accessible to a very, very small number of students, that there was no pathway kind of in the middle of those two options until students reached 7th and then 8th. And that there weren't, and I think this sort of emerged as we've done some of the study around this, but there were not flexibilities within a middle school schedule that allowed for ease of flexible intervention, sort of our ability to quickly gather data on student learning, make an assessment, and offer something up to a student who was really excelling or challenged in math or really any other subject. And some of that has prompted us to look at a number of things, and then family feedback also on the sort of some of the inconsistencies between what they felt they heard from their student or saw come home and what they understood to be our expectations surrounding sort of standards-based instruction. And so there's been a lot of emphasis placed for the team this year, the 6th grade team, on getting ready for next year for the E&E block, for planning for that, and making sure that we have a clear sense of like what the data is used for, why, and how that's going to inform recommendations for students. Next year, some of that attention will need to pivot for the 6th grade team to implementation and for the 7th grade team to what do we do now next, because this group of students will matriculate up over time. So over the next several years, like next year, that committee that's looking at leveling and tracking practices is going to have to answer a question about what happens in 7th for all of our students who are in 6th grade math, and what data informs a decision around that. And do we have recommendations around that? And the committee, as I understand it, had a recommendation around that. But what we pushed on was we have not involved teachers in that conversation, and we need to. So hence also one of the reasons for an internal committee, and for us to really do the work of looking at a schedule and saying, okay, if we switch something around here about what is core, then how do we make sure every student can access that? If we don't, then how do we manage the realities of keeping co-teaching and LCs in 2 levels? So I think that's the sort of complex set of conversations that will have to happen for 7th grade next year, while 6th grade is doing some implementation and some learning and then forwarding that learning along to a committee. So that's kind of where this lives in the midst of other changes that we've already decided on. And I hope that context helps a little bit, because I know that wasn't really good charge for your presentation, but it's probably helpful for folks who have been following along as we go. So I'll stop now.
I mean, I think that context is really helpful. I realize that this is one small slice of the population. Like everybody knows, I am the parent of a person in that slice.
You sure are.
And so it feels a little bit like they're building the train as we're on it, which I understand is like an inevitable part of all of this. But I think that the impression that was given to some community members a year, whenever it was sort of made very clear 6A was not going to be an option for this cohort of, or 7, whatever it was called at the Gibbs, the bypass route was not going to be an option, was sort of like, well, we didn't take it away this year because we want the time to build it. And it sounds like from what you're saying that there has been a lot of work, but it's not, I would not be surprised if people who might be watching this at home thought that's what they were going to hear about tonight.
This task force couldn't have tackled that.
I understand all that now. I am saying this for people who are watching, and I feel confident are going to be a little frustrated by that, because this is all super important. Everything you presented on, I don't want to like minimize like the big picture, the big pathways, the equity concerns. These are all things that like I think are super important. But there's this group of kids who like parents have heard essentials and enrichment, but we don't really understand what that means and how kids are going to access, and even the things that you've talked about like thinking about how we collect it, all the important pieces of this, like those kids are starting school in September. So like I want to set people up for reasonable expectations for what next year is going to look like. And I will be frank, like as one of those parents, I don't think I have a clear idea. And so if I don't have a clear idea, other people are not going to. But I don't want to focus on like just the 6th grade. That's not what your charge was. But I know that is going to be a question that is going to come up.
I mean, one of the things that is going to be very much the case about the essentials and enrichment block and the sort of elimination of WIN as it has existed at Gibbs is that if a student needs additional support, that will be a thing that will be able to provide more flexibly to more students because it's not locked into their schedule in the same way. So hopefully what it will feel like or look like is a more responsive approach with more readily available access to intervention should that need arise, with more data sort of readily at the hands of teachers that is more consistent, and with a more consistent understanding of what we mean when we talk about teaching grade level standard, which the teachers have been working on at length. I know in some of their common planning time and stuff this year. So it's tough because I think what we had before was very obviously sort of structured in.
Right.
And it was very concrete.
Right.
And I can totally see why this might feel less so. However, it's a very concrete shift and change, some of the professional development work that has happened. Some of the
I guess I think that is what is
stuff.
helpful for people to know.
Yeah, the
right?
data use with it.
Like that this is all happening behind the scenes, and that there are ways in which you all, who are like the experts, already know that the experience of a math student at the Gibbs, regardless of their needs, is going to look different next year.
Yep.
So that is, I'm glad to hear that.
And from the hard work of the teachers has also been transforming over the course of this year.
I don't want to dominate. So other questions? Oh, Kersey, or Dr. Allison Ampe. Oh, and? Okay.
Thank you. Just a sec. Let me grab my. So I appreciate what you've said, and you've answered some of the questions with your presentation. One thing, as you're planning for the K-5 math audit, and actually any looking at the curriculum, I feel that there should be a specific call out to be looking at comparing what we're doing to best practices for teaching math and making sure that the math curriculum that we're doing is adhering to best practices, just like what we've done for English. I think we should be doing the same thing for math. I know that's not, English kind of came through the state and whooshed through and has been pushed, but I think that there is the potential for some changes in our math just from the bit of reading that I've done, and I'm hoping that that can be part of the discussion, not just looking at leveling and tracking and stuff, but actually how do students best learn math and how can we best teach it to them? So that's all.
Do you want to speak to the curate reports and some of the other stuff Desi's done in math and like any of the curriculum sort of pieces that have been updated since we adopted what we have at elementary?
Yes. So I know that for elementary, I was not here for that implementation, but my understanding was about 10 years ago. And there's been some changes with the curriculum company, for lack of a better word, where things are not necessarily being updated. And after 10 years, it's a good time to say, how is this curriculum meeting our student needs? And as was stated, how does it align with best practices and what we value for students learning math? And I believe on Curate, it has been not rated as highly. And I don't know if Curate existed when that curriculum first came out. So so there's this platform through DESE where you can look at feedback and how there's 3 core spaces that curriculum can be rated on. And it's rated on a 1, 2, or 3, 3 being the highest. And thinking about using that as one way to decide what to select, which curriculums we want to look at. So I don't want to back into a corner of just talking about curriculum, but I know that that's such an important piece. But we want to do the audit with making sure we're being mindful of that, like the instructional core aspect. Like it's a combination of curriculum, students meeting student needs, and then thinking about our teachers prepared to deliver the curriculum and have the support in their instruction to be successful, to give the students the math experience that they deserve and the math learning they deserve. I will say also for our 6-8 curriculum, it is rated high on Curate. So for right now, the plan has been to stay with that particular curriculum moving forward. But part of that leveling can be also thinking about the recommendation could be maybe we should reevaluate what curriculum we're using, especially if we change our curriculum in K-5, thinking about when we roll that out, what might be a nice complement to it in 6-8. So students feel like there's a consistency in their learning. We know it's this larger ecosystem and we want these different components to work together so nicely. Thank you. That was.
Ms. Haynes-Copperthorne?
Hi, yes, thank you so much to the group, the task force for working on this. I know it's not easy work. I am thoughtful though, especially piggyback on some of the chair's comments too. Like, are we positioned to pivot quickly to implement these changes? Because I'm thoughtful of, I haven't seen a concrete timeline. And I think that that's probably something parents are also thinking about in the back of their minds. Like, when will we see these changes that we can execute and make sure our kid is ready for? And I don't know if we've thought about what a timeline looks like to get these things done and then acting upon them. And when can we expect some of that progress? So that's one question I had. And then my second question is, are we identifying the student populations that are sort of underrepresented in advanced math courses in terms of access? And how does making sure these supports, say in the Gibbs and this math support pilot program, help increase those numbers as we move on into high school and things like that? So those are my 2 compound questions. Just curious about those things.
So when you say a timeline for changes, are you thinking beyond just the initial next steps for next year, looking for a timeline beyond that?
So we're looking. Yeah, there's a lot of we're gonna figure out how to do this. For instance, we're gonna figure out how to create a comms plan or how to collect feedback, how to implement these changes so that parents have better information about their choices. And I'm just curious about if there's a target date for some of these works to be completed, or is it just kind of when we can or as resources allow?
Kind of both, but also going in. Well, a large part of it happens in both that audit at the K-5, it'll fit into that. And then the 7th and 8th grade leveling and tracking committee, having it be part of that work in terms of looking at, so if we think about when I say we want to figure out what measures we're using and how we're using them, part of that can come out of that committee work to ask those questions and say, okay, this isn't enough, we need to do something more. So I feel like there's.
I guess the question is are we identifying benchmarks? In 6 months, we're going to have these things completed as part of our recommendations. The K-5 audit will take us however long. let's say a year, whatever that looks like, right? And then by the start of school in 2028, we'll have a concrete plan. Like that's what I think in this presentation are the kind of like pieces. I'm curious if we're trying to hit dates so that we're not just like sort of meeting in the hopes that we get work done, we're meeting to meet a target.
So I'm going to take this. I think the task, what Ms. Bronner's presenting is what the task force is recommending. So that came from that group. I think they were more specific and granular in like an earlier update before they were done with their work. They were still meeting in subcommittees and they hadn't actually finalized the recommendations. But we gave a preview in a CIAA subcommittee meeting in April, I think, or March. Late March. And I think the task force at that time was trying to be very specific. And we have since dialed a couple things back that we know require more internal vetting. So I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask, like, when will these recommendations happen? When are you going to have an audit started? Who's going to be involved in that? Like the nuts and bolts of all of those things that are in the recommendations. We can define that and send that to the committee at some point this summer before we even return from fall, and then maybe do a follow-up in the fall. Some of these things, however, like we have to really dig in with the 7th grade teachers and 8th grade teachers to determine a path forward for the 6th grade group for this year. Barring a recommendation for changes that folks are maybe not like fully unanimously on board with, but generally on board with, we would continue with 7 and 7A as we currently have at 7th grade. And we would then provide a different timeline, a revised timeline for continued conversation if we feel like that's necessary, or for considering any potential changes. But that doesn't mean we couldn't map out a couple of years of like what decisions would have to be made by certain times. Those are certainly in our heads, but they're not like nailed to anything, because there are things that could pivot. We could learn something new this year. One of the things that I think we've learned over the course of doing this is that the time for planning and for building some coherence and buy-in from folks is important. And we don't want to go fast and unpurposefully and not based in data that we currently, frankly, don't have. So we should collect it before we try to make a decision. She also asked about underrepresented groups. I don't know if you want to.
I mean, that's part of the whole, all of it really too, like making sure that like you named, like students that maybe need access to intervention and supports in 6th and 7th grade as a means to get them to a place where they can access those advanced coursework or higher level courses when they get to high school. So part of that, as Dr. Holman said, was which students have been accessing support in the past, and then where has that led them when they get to high school? Like what happens when they're graduating? What course did they get to? What levels did they get to? And using that to inform going back and saying, what adjustments do we want to make to our intervention and support as a means to get students ready to meet those more advanced learning goals, or at least to give them access if that's what they want. They might not know in 5th or 6th grade what they want, but not creating barriers, continuing to provide, help students learn in a way that opens up their opportunities later in high school.
And we have current tools to allow us to track that, or we're in the process of developing those?
In K-5 we do, but we do need to develop those in 6 through 8 beyond our standard data that we collect, which is MCAS data, and then there's one platform we use in middle school. It's called IXL, and we get benchmark data, but again, that's one type of data and it's very skill focused. And so thinking about broadening out to our unit assessments, not every assessment, but maybe there's certain units where it would be helpful and informative to see how students are learning and demonstrating their learning, and bringing those together to look at student work, and thinking about what next for those students, especially those in those underrepresented groups.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ms. Exton.
Thank you very much for all of this. I'm really happy to see that there is a plan to involve teachers in sort of the next year of this. I think that that was something that unfortunately was missing. I know it was sort of the constraints of the task force to make it hard enough. It was hard for teachers to be a part of that, but I think that is. I think it's really important to have their voices and their perspectives. I'm really glad to hear about that. I am also very happy to hear that there will be more information about what other middle schools are doing. And I hope that when that information comes to us, we can kind of like see it on the screen, sort of like, because I think too, like there are K-8 schools where there's a smaller cohort, and so they might have limitations, whereas a 7 and 8 middle school, like we have here, the whole grade is in one building. There might be opportunities there that different school districts don't have. The one thing that I feel like we haven't heard from all of this that I still think about is we heard for a long time families who wanted more challenge. And I'm worried now that there are students who need a slower pace and more support. And I know I know the Gibbs plan and moving that forward, but I think a lot about 6th, 7th, and 8th grade being sort of this time where students develop sort of their identities as learners, and this place where students sort of have this perspective of, I'm not a math person, I'm not a math student, girls can't do math, just these pieces. And I want to make sure that sort of social emotional side to learning, and particularly around math, is a part of this conversation. And maybe it was, and it just wasn't a part of this presentation. But as we have had these presentations, in CIA, we've had little mini presentations. We've heard from teachers about that, students who feel like they have to sign up for 7A because everyone else is doing it, but really they then get recommended to go to 7 and then they flourish. And so just how do we think about that as these decisions are made, sort of moving?
I mean, those are all great questions, and they definitely came up of not just thinking about learning content and like as a checkbox, but thinking about the whole student and what do we want for our students? Like, how do we support their development? And that math identity is so important. Part of what I envision as part of that work of that leveling committee in the middle school is getting at some of those questions, walking in and sort of just making observations around how students operate in the class, asking students what they feel when they learn math, like what do they feel like when they're presented with something that feels challenging, trying to identify like what reasons are students choosing math 7A over math 7, if for any reason, like what is it that makes them feel like they want to choose one over the other, or they chose math 7 instead of 7A, like just getting at more of their own mindset and thinking about how we can better support, if we continue with those two courses, how do we support students to continue to make the choices that are best for them, not necessarily best for their friends, or based out of not maybe having enough understanding and knowledge of where our pathways go later on. And so some of the feedback that Ms. Rubino and I got from those math nights, parents and students came to them and really asking some good questions and letting us know that they decided that they were going to continue with the grade level doing math 7 and wait for acceleration till later. But hearing how to make those choices was so helpful. And so those family nights did have students in the room. They were listening. There was one night where they were engaged with their families in an activity to talk about like, what's an instructional move we use in class? We're going to engage families in that process to see what it sounds like and feels like. And so really getting students to be part of that decision-making process and I mean, they're the ones that are in it, sitting in that class every day and making sure that they're also informed and they're ready to hear that and they're ready to think about what their choices are, but having it guided by teachers and the adults in their life who can have a lens a little bit broader than what those students have.
That is also the teacher's primary concern. Like when we talk to
Yeah.
teachers, they're asking that exact question. And it's a important one because they've seen the success stories too. The student who's struggling gets intervention in some form or another, comes back up to grade, builds confidence, succeeds. Like we've heard those stories from them. So we want to make sure that whatever we do, we've built that input into the system so that we're not accidentally compromising their ability to think that they can do math and they're a math person by whatever we've put in place, but also that we've got whatever support network in case they're struggling with a concept or a unit or the whole subject. So
What one of the things that I hope we see in the E&E and the Gibbs is that because it's outside of the curriculum, I think that is such a space where kids can realize maybe this math that I've been doing for the way it's been taught because of how the standards are has made me feel like I'm not a math person, that the flexibility and maybe fluidity in terms of who can access enrichment, I guess I want to make sure that I think kids who need intervention also need enrichment. And I think that's sort of why it does feel a little bit like it all sounds like a good idea, but not knowing what it's going to look like is sort of where just because I think that can have such an effect on what Ms. Exton is talking about going forward. And I'm not a math educator, but I have seen places where math is so joyful and so not I'm trying to get to calculus to take, whatever, that's what I hope we're going to see, but it's a little hard to envision that. I will say also, I just want to say thank you and everyone who you work with for the math mornings. All 5 grades at Pierce, or all 6 grades at Pierce did that this year. The previous year it had only been a couple. I think that I don't know anybody who thought those were not a great thing for kids and parents. So.
yeah, we don't need a vote or anything.
No,
We plan
no.
to go and do, and
Okay,
we'll keep
thank
everybody
you.
updated.
Thank you.
I do think we'll work over the summer to get
Yeah.
some answers to some of the meatier questions down and to the committee. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now moving on to the second read of the school handbooks. Dr. Homan.
Okay, I sent these along to the committee earlier this week, I think, or over the weekend. And the biggest change is a formatting adjustment surrounding the handbooks themselves, where we've taken the content that is the same in all 3 and moved it into a district-wide handbook. And the plan would be, we've shared this with council and vetted it and added notes in the handbooks, making sure we're directing people to the district one where the content warrants it. But the biggest shift is that we would put in the back to school form that families sign off on, where families sign off on the handbook, that they should read this one and this one. These are the district-wide policies. These are the ones specific to your school, things like grading policies and attendance policies and all that are a little more school specific would be in the leveled handbook. Those leveled handbooks, like I said, have pretty big, bold, bright links to send people to the district handbook. Discipline, nursing and health services, and there are a couple other policies in there that are specific to the entire district, as well as some resources. So notes about CPAC and MLPAC, which are district-wide groups, are in that district-wide one. Some of those things are also just reiterated in the school ones because they're short. So that was the biggest adjustment. We did have a legal counsel go through. She had a couple of small changes to wording and verbiage, but nothing was major. Everything else should be the same as the last version that you saw when we met last week, week before last. And I'm happy to take any questions or make any adjustments to these. Otherwise, we are seeking a vote, an affirmative vote on the high school handbook if possible tonight, and receipt of the middle school and elementary school handbooks.
Any question? Oh, Dr. Allison Ampe?
Thanks. So I'm just wondering if we need to have the word discipline in the name of the APS handbook for legal reasons, that we have to be supplying that or we're failing various legal things. So that's one question. A bigger question is that on page 16, it has a heading that says violations subject to suspension or expulsion. And that has, it's a list of things, and it includes on page 17, controlled substances, alcohol, and marijuana. Then if you look at page 25, there's something called substance use interventions. And it talks about when a student violates the school substance use policies, the response may include a combination of disciplinary actions and supportive interventions aimed at education, accountability, and safety. In consultation with families, the school may implement measures such as substance use risk assessment, drug testing, participation in diversion programs, restorative practices, collaborative problem solving, or referrals to counseling and educational programs. These interventions are designed to promote healthy decision-making and reintegration and may be used as alternatives to suspension when appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
So those are completely opposed.
So
I mean,
this is a legal thing. Do you want me to explain why?
yeah,
So we should say, because substances in the school is definitely a suspendable offense. I've never seen Dr. Janger do a straight expulsion on a student. But like legally, we are advised to keep that in there because under 37H, half, 3/4, there's a few of them where that's allowed. But those substance use interventions, those are almost always in a substance case deployed as either an alternative or in addition to, or as a condition for return. In the case of not really a long-term suspension, for example, that could shorten it.
the point that I'm trying to make is the page 16 seems to indicate that violations subject to suspension or expulsion, that if you do these things, you are either suspended or expelled. There is no other, that's how I read that.
It's subject
because
to it.
Right.
It doesn't mean we will. So it is a potential consequence. Suspension is a potential consequence to these infractions.
Okay. I don't read it as potential. I read it as if this happens, you will be suspended or expelled. I mean, if you do this, you will be suspended or expelled. And so that's a change from the previous high school policy, kind of, which is a little bit ambiguous. I mean, the previous high school manual. So that's one comment I have about this. Then the other comment I have about the same handbook is that on page 30, it talks about procedures for short-term out-of-school suspensions, blah, blah. I'd like, and maybe this can happen next year. I know this is a new thing, and I can bring it up next year to have more discussion. I'd like clarity on what the minimum notification period is for parents and students before a hearing is conducted. Because it talks about that first class mail is okay, but it also talks about email. And I've heard of emails going out and having a hearing scheduled within an hour of the email being sent. And I think that as part of our, this is essentially a policy document. As part of our policy, it should be clear to parents that there is a minimum notification period for this, between the school telling them that there's going to be a hearing and the hearing happening. I'm not talking about clearly, kids who are bringing weapons into schools or something dangerous, but for suspensions which are being conducted for lesser offenses, I think that we don't have to have that quick a turnaround, and I think it should be clear to parents what the minimum should be.
Okay, I will ask legal counsel. All of that language in that portion comes directly from the law. But I'll ask about that. I could see the high school responding that the quick turnaround, first of all, if it's that quick, I'd be really surprised if it was not accompanied by a phone call that may or may not have been received. But like, it should be, because often if it's that fast, it's because it's an infraction that is severe enough to warrant potentially an emergency removal, and the administration is trying to avoid emergency removal. But in that case, I would tell them just to do an emergency removal, because you don't actually have time to schedule a hearing. So I'll look into that and ask Attorney Meinl about it. I think the language on subject to suspension I drew directly from the high school handbook.
Yes.
So I will double check
It
that.
is what is in the high school. I think I was going to bring it up for the high school, but now it's moved into this other one.
Yeah.
And I think it's changed, if you have something that is notification, acceptable notification is a first class letter, that's suggesting a certain amount of time, right? Well, first class letter is not coming in an hour. So
Right.
I think there is some leeway, and I'm not talking about emergency, something that justifies an emergency removal, like what you were talking about. I'm talking about something that's not any danger to other students or staff or anything.
Okay.
So.
I can look into that. I thought that the language, the violation subject to suspension or expulsion, also was pulled straight from the high school handbook. I didn't think that was different, so I'll double check that.
No, that's a little bit different. I mean, it's different. The formatting is different. And to me, because of that, I mean, if it just said violations potentially subject to suspension or expulsion include, I'd be happy with that. It's when you say it's subject to me, it says it's either this or that. And that is a new and different.
Ms. Exton?
So I don't know how to sort of reconcile this, but at the very beginning of that section where it says code of discipline, in the blurb, it says the violations of the code of discipline enumerated below describe some, but not all
Right.
school-related disciplinary offenses for which a student may be subject to suspension, long-term suspension or expulsion. And then in the bolded, it doesn't say the maybe, so I don't know.
I can put maybe in there. I'm okay with potentially or maybe in there.
It's Dr. Allison Ampey's concern, but I just wanted to point out it's
Yeah,
inconsistent.
I'd be happy with either of those.
I think I see no reason not to do that. And I actually would also, let me talk to Dr. Janker about it, because I wouldn't mind, this primarily pertains to the high school. So I wouldn't mind being explicit that we tend to use as many alternative methods as we can as a primary response, that to make it clear that, we retain the right in any situation to respond according to the situation itself. We don't have a if this then that approach to any of this, so I wouldn't want to convey that to families either. So I appreciate that feedback.
Anyone? Mr. Schlickman?
I just want to say that having done suspensions is that usually you're notifying the parent right away with a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're providing a formal written notice of the event by whatever means
Yep.
that you're providing a hard copy of it. And that a parent who call them in for a hearing will receive this document as well, so that I don't think that we should be gumming up this portion of the handbook.
So, Kevin, are we?
So I'm gonna add potentially, because I feel like I can
do
change that language.
Right.
I would want to talk to Attorney Meinalt before adjusting anything in the notifications piece and talk to Dr. Jenger about timelines. I think a good faith effort in the examples I've seen has been made to make sure that families get a phone call and ample notice ahead of a hearing, but I'm going to double check that against some of my own records too. I would suggest perhaps that if we can, we pass it with the potentially language and the agreement that we'll look into notification timelines with attorneys, if that's amenable to the committee.
Is that, Dr. Allison Ampe, how do you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, ample notification would be fine. I just think there should be some parent. Again, this is not talking about kids who would be a danger to other students or staff or anything. But if a suspension hearing is being held and there is time, I think there should be like overnight. I mean, it should be like the next day or something rather than the same day.
Yeah.
So that parents have a chance, because it goes on to talk about how the student's supposed to be able to put forward what they think about what happened, and that parents can put forward what they feel are mitigating circumstances. And if parents, and since we're not letting kids text or have cell phones, the parents won't have a chance to even talk to the student if it's happening the same day. And I think that's not fair to them.
I would agree. It's an expectation. So I just want to talk to the lawyer before we put it in a handbook.
So we're looking for a motion to accept.
High school and district, and to receive elementary and middle.
Someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Cardin?
Yes.
Mr. Thielman?
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman?
Yes.
Ms. Exton?
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe?
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Copperthorne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Schlichtman with second read on policies and other things.
Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff hanging out here. And a couple of things have different impacts. So I'm going to take these in alphabetical order. First two are just minor changes, ACMi and JFBB, minor corrections. So I would move approval of ACMi and JFBB as presented.
Second?
Any discussion? Mr. Cardin?
Yes.
Mr. Thielman?
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman?
Yes.
Ms. Exton?
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe?
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Copperthorne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Okay, we now come up to JKAA timeout, seclusion, and restraint of students. These are somewhat substantive. This also requires the policies and procedures that are before us to be in place by August 17th. I move approval of JKAA as presented.
Second?
Mr. Cardin?
Yes.
Mr. Thielman?
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman?
Yes.
Ms. Exton?
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe?
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Copperthorne?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you.
Now I'm stopping at JLCD and JLCDC as Dr. Allison Ampe had questions here. So I ask Dr. Allison Ampe where she is, or the superintendent where she is pertaining to these two policies.
Okay. I didn't understand. Am I supposed to talk now, or are you holding them to? I didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're doing it now, but if, so we'll have to figure out whether we want to vote to amend it or postpone it.
So I received clarification today of the concern. I have sent that along to our nursing director. I think her take on it is that JLCD and JLCDC go together. That JLCDC is the intent of these was to actually make it easier for students to do self-administration and for us to do medication administration, not harder. And so I need more clarification in order to adequately address the concern or confusion within the policies, and would have to sit with her to better understand how she's understanding that it doesn't restrict further what we already do, what our current practice is. It codifies current practice to some extent, and I think it actually loosens up some of the restrictions we've had in prior documentation or policy. It does introduce a policy on self-administration, so it might feel like then there's more restriction because there's a new policy on it, but that was not the intent from what I understood. But like, because we just kind of got some clarification on that today, I think my recommendation would be that we table, review, and bring back at the first meeting, because I'm not sure I'm able to resolve it that.
Okay, we can postpone
In
it.
real
No,
time.
I'm sure we'll have some sort of meeting over the summer.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll bypass that. We'll go to KBG, Parent Advisory Councils. There is basically a change in the KBG that we instituted at the request of Cheryl Miller. But after consulting with the CPAC, we learned that the specific language regarding the duties and responsibilities for the CPAC are in regulation, and that we should retain that portion as it is. So my motion would be to approve KBG, but retaining the current language regarding the CPAC.
So that's the red in the
One that
The red
we're
language?
getting rid of the red
okay.
and retaining the language that was
That's
crossed
crossed
out. Yeah.
So what changes are we making then?
So essentially, what we're doing is we're adding in the Parent Advisory Council portion for the LPAC.
Okay.
So this red language would go away. This language would stay because this is built into the regulations.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think there was some language in that original language that they wanted to retain that is not captured in the other language for ML packs. Yes, it's inconsistent. They're inconsistent with each other as a
But that's the
result of the regulation that established each of them.
Are inconsistent.
Yeah.
Would it make more, I mean, I don't want to create more work, but it would make more sense for them to be two separate policies, or, I mean, if there's, I don't know. I mean,
No, there's really no need.
okay,
I think MASC had them together. So.
okay.
So the motion is to approve this with the LPAC changes, but deleting the CPAC change.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Harden,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman.
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman.
Yes.
Ms. Exton,
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe,
Yes,
Ms. Haynes Coppathorn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you.
We have JLCCB-E, protocol and guidelines for students with life-threatening allergies. And we're looking to delete this because it is really outside the bounds of school committee practice, and that this is best done on a building level with the supervision of the superintendent. So the motion would be to delete JLCCB from the policy manual.
Noting that these are protocols that we follow.
Mhm.
They're procedural in nature, which is why the recommendation to eliminate. They also shift with shifting recommendations
Mhm.
and guidelines. And a lot of the measures in our wellness policy capture considerations surrounding life-threatening allergies and the response to them and keeping, healthy allergen reduced rooms and celebrations. So
The issue was is that when we originally did this, and Jeff was sort of leading the charge on that and spent a lot of time with it, this was very new to us.
right.
And that we really needed to present the community within the policy manual a really detailed description of what we were up to. But now that we're doing this as a routine, and not only for us, but most schools are doing this sort of thing as a routine, it's best left to the specifics to the individual school administration. So the motion is to delete JLCCB-.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Cardin?
Wait.
Oh, no, sorry. Dr. Allison Ampe, thank you.
No, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do we need to wait until we have a policy on self-administration of meds before we delete this one?
No.
Okay.
I because it's procedural, I would say no. Like the practices around this we have procedures for this. We have
That's fine.
some policy in place for self-administration that works for now. So I think we're okay.
Anything else?
I just said Paul's right, it was quite a process a long time.
Yeah.
It was all like 20 years.
It was tough. I admire Jeff's work on
But
it. Things change.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Cardin?
Yes.
Mr. Thielman?
Yes.
Mr. Schlickman?
Yes.
Ms. Exton?
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe?
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Capathorn?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to the follow-up from our last meeting presentation on the after-school report. Is that you or Mr. Schweitzer?
I'll speak to this one, but I will start by thanking Mr. Schweitzer for being a stand-in on the after-school report at our last meeting. We knew that questions would come up that help guide the audit and the review, and that maybe we would not have data to answer just yet. But thank you, because the questions were very thoughtful and thorough, and we've done our best to answer some of the ones that came up at the last meeting to the best of our ability. But admittedly, some of our answers are that this is why we're doing a review. We hope that it will give us some answers to some of these questions. So there are a couple of things I think that I'll go over as more generally as an overview, instead of like going through each of the individual questions. A lot of these are specific to our ability to look at a staff roster and specific hourly rates for each program on a staff roster, which we currently do not collect. Do we have the rights to? Certainly. Do we have the sort of internal capacity to analyze all of those data? Not at the moment. So we're hoping that the review gives us a little bit more capacity to dig more deeply into some of those data surrounding things like salaries. We've provided an estimate that basically uses the number of staff they reported to us, but we don't know if each of those individual people works part-time 2 days a week, 5 days a week, and it varies widely by program. And we divided the total amount spent on staff salaries by whatever that number of people is. So that's giving us an average, but it's not really telling us a full range. But I did provide the range for AASP because we have those employees in-house, so we know what their full range of hourly wage is. The same is true of information about the students who is and isn't accessing programming. That requires a roster. And we don't have the full rosters for each of these programs for all of the students. So we would have to first get that, and then they wouldn't have unique identifiers that allow us to line that up to demographic data in the system. We would have to do that lineup. And that would also only answer the question that surrounds who is getting access to after-school programming. So we could answer whether that's disproportionate. we could do the same analysis against the wait list. But I also offered a little bit of information about wait lists in the memo that we get these reported to us quite differently, and they're maintained differently by different programs. So AASP, the approach that they take is, what I have said to Mr. Morse is you never take a family off the wait list. If they're on the wait list at the beginning of the year, they stay on the wait list. Because what that tells us is this family did not get what their first choice was. They didn't get to go to the program at the school, and they wanted to. So even if they found another option, so if Todd calls them up and says, we've got a spot on Wednesdays, and the family says, just Wednesdays? I don't really want just Wednesdays. I actually need the whole week. Call me if you have a spot open up that's the whole week, which happens. Another program might offer a spot here. No, I found something else. I figured it out for this year, and take them off the wait list. I would rather not do that. So we get different numbers depending on the approach vector that person takes to maintaining a wait list, to sort of refining or adjusting the wait list based on what they hear from families if they were to reach out because they have an open spot. And I don't have the granularity on how each program maintains the wait list. I just know the stories we kind of get and the questions we get when we ask for that information. I asked for the wait list as of the end of the school year this time. And that's what I typically do. I'll say, like, as of a date, what was your wait list? To try to get as close to apples and apples as possible. But there are caveats attached to those data too. So that is also part of why we prioritized enrollment. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that folks were looking for each of the AASP program wait lists. So we did provide that. But the enrollment numbers are more solid in that we're very clear about what we're asking for. The total number of individual students in your program on any given day. The total, like in total, and then also we divide it to figure out the average number of students per day. So that creates I would say, sharper snapshot of who is getting access to the programming. And then from that, we can sort of get an idea of who's not from some of the other data that we have, but we're trying to make sure we compare apples to apples. There were also some questions about AASP's finances. I know I had spoken to this a little bit in last year's programming, but they had funded a large effort to do some professional development with our recess monitors at the schools, and to create sort of some recess routines and lunch routines. It also got our AASP staffers more hours. That has been largely funded as additional staffing by AASP over the last couple of years. And we're going to have to adjust our approach to that. So that's one reason. The PD itself cost a significant amount, about $150,000 to do. So that was happening also. Part of the goal here was to bring that fund to a more appropriate balance. And so we've been doing that in some of our other revolving accounts. Hopefully that clarifies a little bit of why that's off. We also have some cleanup, some data cleanup that we're doing tied to just some miscategorization of staff or someone not understanding if a staff was a daycare member of staff or an AASP member of staff. So we're fixing that too, and we can provide a projection on this revolving account next time we meet or in the fall. We definitely need it for the audit anyway, if we do that, so that they've got up-to-date financial data and can do some analysis of the ins and outs. Rates, I didn't provide rates last year. I did provide my best attempt at a cost for 5 days of care for a family. The closest estimate of that in this report that you received last time is the revenue divided by number of students, because that's how much they bring in per student in the program on average. That would be the cost per student in that program, but it's not factoring in, like, there are students that go for 1 or 2 days that bring in only that much revenue, and then there are students that come in for 5 days that bring in that much revenue. I think that part of why I didn't try to do that calculation again was because I'm pretty sure it was flawed because of how some of the programs run their rates. The Bishop program in particular has a very flexible rate model where you only pay for a certain number of hours. Yeah, so comparing that to AASP where you pay a certain amount for each day is kind of challenging. And then the other programs have like a rate reduction for the second student or the third student. So if you have a sibling, you're paying less as a family. That rate inconsistency, frankly, is also part of why we want to do a review and take a look at all of this. So those are the big questions. I do Our goal is to have the means and programming options available that do not turn a family away from in-building programming if that is what they are seeking. But in order to do that, we feel we really need to do some deep looks at our programming, what's working for kids, what's working for families, the different approaches we take to rates, what we're paying staff, what the best staffing model is and the most efficient one, and what are other options out there and what do other communities do. So important to us is the link to the community. We've had that for a very long time in town. I think that creates a different kind of investment in these programs, a different kind of partnership with the school itself. My inclination is to internalize as opposed to going to an outside vendor, but I think we need to consider all possibilities and really take a look at what that would involve and what an appropriate timeline for implementation would be after the review. The goal is not to speed this along at top speed, but to really take our time and do our due diligence on it, which is why the request for the review. I'm happy to answer any questions on the follow-up. We are seeking approval of the job description so that we can get that posted and get somebody working on some of the review work in August, if at all possible.
One thing that just occurred to me as you were talking about the challenges in figuring out the rates, and I'm sure that if we approve this position and whatever final report we'll see it, is I think it would, I mean, even if it's hard to calculate it the way that you would like to calculate it, even just for us seeing what the, like, I know what AASP's, application enrollment looks like at 2 days, 3 days, whatever. Like, I wouldn't have known about Bishop. And so just to, I think, knowing that variability, because there's equity issues there too. Like, I know plenty of parents who would like to pay for less than till 6 o'clock if that was possible for them. So that's, I think, another thing to include.
I can certainly go get all the different.
Yeah, no, I mean,
that's
at
easy
this
to go
point,
grab,
we're not
but-
like taking,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think you have to do that. It just occurred to me that that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? I can't see.
Hmm.
No, she shook her head no.
So we need a motion to approve the job description.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman.
Yes.
Mr. Schlickman.
Yes.
Ms. Exton.
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
Yes,
Ms. Hans Copperthorne.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. When we have this like posting, because I know you and I have discussed like thinking there are people in the community
Yeah.
for like, if you can make sure we, like, I would share, this is something that I feel like would make sense for schools to, PTOs or whoever to share
Sure.
widely. Okay, finance report, Mr. Schweitzer.
Good evening, school committee. So today I'll be following up on my last finance report update, which was 2 meetings ago, back on May 28th. So I'll be presenting a brief finance update. Nothing significant of note financially has changed or impacted the finances over the past couple of weeks. But tonight I will just give one brief update on the fair share amendment as it results in additional funding for circuit breaker this year. And then also item right after this update is the request for the committee to review, discuss, and approve the transfers between the transfer categories so that we can end the year balanced as well as within those categories. So just to set expectations for the update tonight, in the portal you have the memo, the slides, as well as a single pager for the revolving accounts. Briefly, we'll just again go over the methodology for this projection. We'll review the adjusted balance. We'll then again go over some of the, just for sake of what this report's been over the last couple of months. Again, if we happen to end the year balancing the books, kind of what are those tools or places that we could look at and tap into to slightly balance that budget. And then again, I will present to the committee the transfers as proposed. So on slide 3, just reviewing the projection methodology. Again, just as always, the financial data that you get in the charts for budgetary, actual, and for the encumbrances, those are come coming directly from Munis, so there's no manipulation there, just to ensure the integrity and transparency of that report. The payroll projections for the year end, including the summer, are there in the projected column. At this time of running the report in June 12th, and nothing significant changed since, there was only a couple kind of in-transit encumbrance items. I was still expecting to hit the books that had yet to do so. And then you'll see just slightly different from last time is that for the sake of giving an appropriate roll-up to each of the schools, departments, and then eventually those categories, what I have been tracking separately in that chart is like add-ins or, offsets that still have to be taken into account. Those are now within the projected column, but I do detail and itemize them out on page 2 of the memo, but they're the same offsets that we've been discussing over the last couple meetings. So again, those are already in there because of the sake of the transfer roll-up. So just again, looking at the kind of currently adjusted balances review, we are at a balanced budget as of right now. Just for the sake of the discussions that we have been having, just wanted to summarize again that we do kind of have 2 tools that we could tap into at this time of the year if we did have to balance the budget. One is we could tap into this year's circuit breaker reimbursement, which right now is being budgeted to be spent next year for the legally 1-year carry. And then 2 is we do have some revolving accounts that are going to be closing out the year not spent fully down to zero. So we could strategically tap into those. Just to follow up on the fair share amendment was approved about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago. I presented that we potentially could get up to about $75K of additional monies. We increased not to the full 75% claim reimbursement. It only went to about 68. So we got about half of that. So we did receive, or will receive in our Q4 payment, an additional $36,000 that we were not anticipating. So that could be tapped into if needed to, but if not, that is something that's going to carry to next year. Looking at the proposed budget transfers, these are at the bottom of page 3 in your memo, and I also have it detailed by each individual general ledger line from those categories at the bottom of page 13. For each of these categories, I could comment if you have any questions on kind of why are higher or lower. But I think more I just want to set the expectation for myself, and so you can have it for me for next year as I'm entering kind of my first full year, that as budget transfers within these categories, but especially if anything's crossing, to ensure that we're balanced throughout the year. I think I'll be presenting those obviously a lot sooner within the year and consistently throughout the year. And I think doing so would provide a little bit more of a thorough finance update throughout the year. And that'll also set us up with a solid foundation for a successful build of the 28 budget. So just in closing, I open up for discussions on the report or any questions you have on the transfers. But again, no financial changes since the last report 4 weeks ago. Did just want to note the additional circuit breaker money did come through of about $38K. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Can I? Any questions?
Mhm.
No. Oh, Mr. Schlickman.
So this should close things out. We won't need an additional transfer over the summer, which is something we've normally looked at.
Yeah, as of right now, the transfers that are being presented to you ensures that each of the categories still ensure well over $10,000 or so of balance. I expect some of those will actually still have money come back to them, as we're still liquidating POs. If there was any final transfers that were needed, we could certainly come forward. But I think there's also a little discretion if it's nominal $1,000 here or so, potentially could tap into a revolving account as well, just to balance that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have anything?
And Kersey has a question.
Oh, Dr. Allison-Ampe, thank you.
I had a question about, I'm not sure, are we talking about the financial report also, or are we just doing budget transfers right now?
But
I could probably answer
Yeah,
a question to
go
both
ahead.
because it's probably in context of each other.
Yeah, so the financial report shows that we're pulling, it looks like we're pulling around $225,000 out of an account for food service.
Yep.
I don't have it open. I just wanted to be sure that that is correct.
Yes, so I think I gave an update on this last meeting. So this is when I came here, inherited that anyone that was working as like a food lunch monitor or something like that was directly charged newly this past year to the general fund. Otherwise, it's an eligible expense to hit the food services revolving account fund sustainably going forward, and it's appropriate to hit there. So this is just, it has still maintained to hit the general fund, but the anticipation was always to transfer it to the food services revolving account. And then for going forward to next year is that every payroll related to that would directly hit that account. So it's more of a cleanup item for this year.
Okay,
But going
I just
forward,
wanted
it'll
to
be
be
cleaner.
sure, because we
Yeah.
don't have any eyes on that other account, and I just want to be
Yep.
sure there is money out there somewhere that we are
Yep.
pulling from. Okay, that's all, thank you.
Any other questions? So we need a vote on the budget transfers?
So moved.
Second, someone?
Second.
Second?
Third, fourth. Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman,
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman,
Yes.
Ms. Exton,
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe,
Yes,
Ms. Haynes Coppathorn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving out of order a little bit from the posted agenda. We're going to go to the consent agenda now. All items listed with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the committee so requests, in which event the item will be considered in its normal sequence. Warrant 26307, June 23rd, 2026, $1,251,416.92, and the school committee draft meeting minutes from May 28th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman.
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman.
Yes.
Ms. Exton.
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe.
yes,
Ms. Haynes Copthorne.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are going to go next to subcommittee liaison reports and announcements. Dr. Allison Ampe.
nothing to report for budget.
Mr. Thielman.
Facilities Subcommittee met yesterday.
Mhm.
And we had a conversation with various user groups about using the facilities.
Mhm.
There are three categories of costs for renting the facilities, and that was explained to people. I think that, there was the commentary was that there's high demand for our facilities right now because of the fact that we have 3 turf fields with lights. And so Mr. Schweitzer laid out our protocols and answered questions about availability of the space.
Anything for community relations?
No report.
Curriculum instruction assessment and accountability, Ms. Exton.
No report.
Policy and procedures, Mr. Schlichtman.
No report.
Arlington High School Building Committee, Mr. Thielman.
We're doing some stuff out back and we're almost done.
Any liaison reports? Announcements? Future agenda items? Okay, superintendent's update.
All right. So I would like to begin by congratulating the class of 2026 on their successful graduation. I was not here at the last meeting, even though this happened before then, to say congratulations. This is always such a joyful event. The ceremonies were lovely. It was the largest class we've graduated in a long time. And it was great to see all of the families there and students celebrating, and the rain held off and it sprinkled just right at the very end on us. We have had a lot of celebrations, so I'm going to just go through a few of them over the last several weeks. Seniors across Arlington participated in organized clapouts at our elementary schools before graduation. We've had this tradition sort of growing over the last few years. We've had more and more students participate each year. It was very well coordinated this year. Mr. McCarthy made sure that all of our students knew exactly when their school's clapout was going to be, and students who entered Arlington after they were in elementary school are welcome to join their friends for one of these clapouts and enjoy the joy from the little kids too. But they go back to their home school. They get clapped out of the building. They sort of do a round around the whole building. It's a lovely opportunity for our young learners to see the big kids in all of their graduation gear and to celebrate them. And parents are invited. It's a lovely moment. So there's a picture there from the Thompson clap out. The parents are kind of just right behind them, cheering them on as they headed up to the very hot 3rd floor that day. With our 4th annual Pride celebration was this, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before that on June 13th. I want to thank the Rainbow Task Force for continuing that new Arlington tradition, new-ish. It's in its 4th year now. And they've added some additional events to that work. Pictured here is the bracket table where students were coloring some ornaments, and the banner they had this lovely note on it that said people are different, but that's what makes them special. We also had String Fest this past week, which welcomed hundreds of APS musicians to an outdoor night at the cinema on the 13th. We had a blow-up dinosaur conducting the orchestra, some Oompa Loompas also playing cello, and all musicians managed to escape Jurassic Park with a lot of fun stories and proud smiles, and we received some lovely emails from families following String Fest. It's always super amazing to see just how many string players we have in town. And then we also had our very first band blast held on Juneteenth. We celebrated that with a vocalist who sang Lift Every Voice and Sing with our band students. They had that at Robbins Farm Park, and the picture of that is kind of up along the top. You can see our band students and all of their families enjoying a day on the grass. And it was a beautiful day and was a lot of fun. And so I anticipate that will become an annual celebration as well. Our AHS choir, this is just fun news for anybody who enjoys baseball and music at the same time. Our AHS choir has been invited to perform the national anthem at Fenway on Tuesday, September 1st. This is the night before school starts. So warning, if your routine requires an early morning, maybe don't come to the game. But if you feel like you need to ring in the new school year with some fun and celebratory vibes, then this would be a lot of fun to attend. I certainly plan to be there. Our AHS choral program will sing the national anthem. It's also a special Teacher Appreciation Day at Fenway, and so there's some reduced ticket prices. There will be a lot of educators there, and it'll be a lot of fun for our students to sing for the crowd. So that information is there. Families can scan the QR code if tickets are still available. They should be. I don't know why they wouldn't be, but please join us. Parent Square launch information. I wanted to share some of this out with the community, and we're going to have some messaging going out in the next day and a half, because that's what we have left about this. Parent Square is a communications platform that links up directly with PowerSchool. It is a more flexible platform for communicating with families, and it also allows us to provide access to our educators to this platform, which rosters the students, provides for a little bit more consolidated messaging for families so they could sort of see everything in one stream. It is going to gradually replace School Messenger as our messaging application. We're going to have a little bit of overlap so that we have a backup in case anything were to go awry. Families will get a link to download the application at some point this summer and again in the fall, and they'll just get a heads up for right now that this is coming, and they should be watching out for that invitation to download the application on their phones. We're going to conduct test messaging in the fall to prepare for the winter weather season, make sure everybody's receiving all of our notifications. Teachers will onboard and learn about the capabilities of the program throughout next school year. There's really not a set of changed approach here, besides that we're going to use this as our primary messaging platform for next year. We're going to have some explicit expectations in place regarding school-wide messaging, so like the principal sending regular updates to families, and we'll work on that with the principals. And then for teachers, we're going to ask that they check it out and see what the features are, and we'll do some training. We'll go to each school and answer people's questions, and we'll provide some guidelines around best practices and use to avoid things like people feeling like they need to be, answering direct messages in the evening. That's not an expectation that we're going to have. How to use some of the features that are a little bit more immediate, real time, so that people don't kind of set up expectations that we can't sustain or maintain. So we'll work on that with educators when we head into the school year. Really, the only thing to know right now is this is coming. You will get more information about it. And we're going to hold everybody's hand through the process. What I think people will find is this is easy to use, very accessible, consolidates messaging. It's easier to find things, easier to search the app for that one email you got about this one thing, but you don't know where to find it. It can search that pretty easily. And so hopefully it will be a welcome shift for families and an easier one for the district to maintain to make sure everybody's getting any urgent messaging. Your enrollments are included in your materials. I want to say welcome to a few new administrators and staff members to the APS team. We have a new Gibbs assistant principal, Sadia Aziz, who will join the team in the fall. Pierce assistant principal, Ms. Jess Ellis, will join the team in the fall. A new Brackett assistant principal, Ms. Megan Dumas. A new Dallin assistant principal, Ms. Danielle LaRoque. And a new elementary special education coordinator, Dr. Emily Plant. We also have a new district enrollment engagement specialist, Claire Nakamori, who has been doing our work as registrar for the past, I think, year and a half or 2 years, is moving back to Japan, and we wish her the best, but she's been fabulous. Miss Kendra Ahern has been the part-time assistant in the central office, and she will be moving into the role of registrar and will be the district enrollment engagement specialist next year. So congratulations to all these lovely folks who will be joining the APS team. We'll have them here to introduce themselves in the fall as well. And finally, and this is why we moved the update to the end, we'd like to take a moment to celebrate Ms. Keys on a very successful and lengthy term as AAA president. Yours has been a tenure, Julie, that I feel justified in labeling epic. The English teacher in me needs to make sure that I choose the right word. So I don't choose epic lightly. Epic poetry, according to some online dictionaries that my AI bot scoured, features expansive settings, divine intervention, and overarching cultural importance. That's what that means. So while our setting might not be very expansive in Arlington, it's a fairly small town, we have had several moments over the past 5 years working together when we've either been convinced or fearful of divine intervention. And you certainly can't underestimate the cultural importance of the work that you've done, that we've done together under Julie's leadership, and that's what I want to focus on tonight. If there's one thing I know about remarkable leadership, it is that they always show up, and I have known very few leaders who show up as prolifically as Julie does. Whether you're showing up at negotiations ready to argue for what membership needs, showing up at a tough meeting to support a staff member through a tough situation, or at a concert with your viola ready to play with your students, or at a rally supporting students' rights to be who they are at school free of fear, or at our leadership workshop in August to support your school or another school's planning for the year, or at a deeper learning convening that thoroughly convinces you the administration has literally gone off the deep end, or the deeper learning end, if you will, or at a school committee meeting ready to share your membership's perspective on an important issue, you have shown up and you have encouraged those you lead to do the same. You are tough and fair, direct and kind, clear and consistent, and your leadership has been a beautiful model for what it looks like to do this work in a way that improves the school district culture and enables continuous growth for everyone in the organization. Under Julie's leadership and with her collaboration, we have passed 2 successful overrides, successfully negotiated so very many contracts. These contracts have given our staff benefits and pay increases that have improved internal staff culture while catching the attention of candidates across the state, which has markedly improved our hiring pools and our reputation as a district. Your leadership stands out as well because you've held a high standard for the performance of yourself and your colleagues. Julie helps us develop and message those expectations and understands that most disagreements happen when expectations are not clear, so helps us make sure that we are as clear as we can be. In short, I've been beyond grateful to have you as a partner for my first 5 years of superintendency because your leadership has allowed us to prove our theory that a rising tide really does lift all boats. Students and staff are able to thrive when both our shared standards and our expectations for support are maintained at a high level with honest and frequent communication and attention to building policies that will last long after we have left these roles. So AI also told me that epic can just mean impressive. And I don't think many folks would argue that you've been an impressive and exceptionally skilled union leader, a tireless advocate for members, a consummate professional through some of the most trying times that our field has ever seen, and a model of what it looks like to work in a way that keeps students at the center of our efforts. Your tenure leaves a lasting legacy on the school system and on me, and I will forever be grateful to you for your honesty, patience, and partnership. Congratulations. Enjoy just teaching middle schoolers, not just because you're going to be awesome, and we're going to miss you very, very much on this end. So
Thank you.
enjoy.
Very excited to be going back full time into teaching. Ooh, I'm very excited for cake. Oh, thank you. I'm so proud of what we have done in Arlington, and I credit a lot of that to the people in this room, not just the people in the union, but I was in a meeting a couple weeks ago with some other leaders, and somebody said, I don't get anything out of my school committee and superintendent unless I make a big public spectacle about it. And I was like, wow, that's the exact wrong way to do things in Arlington. Like big public spectacles and showy tricks and things don't work. You have to talk to people like they're humans, and you have to sit down and assume positive intent for everybody at the table. And that's what we do here, and we get good things that come out of it. So thank you for your collaboration and support. And Jenna's going to do great stepping in behind me. But it's been 10 years of school committee meetings, starting when I was vice president, and I'm looking forward to not having to worry about that on Thursday nights anymore. So thank you very much. I'm not just eating this whole cake. Liz, are there like plates?
I didn't know if anybody else had remarks, but we can also do that while we head into executive session if that's easier for folks.
Anybody else?
I just said that, it has been a delight having you at this table because you've been thoughtful, prepared, always ready to challenge us. And you jump in. I've brought in a lot of insights that have taught me a lot. So I am just grateful that you've been with us
Thank you.
for all these 10 years. I don't think it feels like it was just yesterday.
I had to tell somebody the other day, like, there's no more sixth floor.
There is no more sixth floor. Yeah. No, we don't have it anymore. Sorry.
Mr. Cardin.
Sure. Having sat through at least two of the biggest negotiations with you, I also want to echo the great epic words of Dr. Homan, and thanking you for your partnership and agreeing to disagree in a great, reasonable manner, and again, focusing on the kids and the Arlington schools and everything that you've done. Just the tone that you've brought to the table has been very important, and so thank you, and the energy as well.
Mr. Schlickman, and then Ms. Exton.
I also want to say that the collaborative nature of your leadership and the relationship you've built with us through the AEA has been very valuable.
Thank you.
We're able to do great things because we're a partnership and not adversaries.
Yeah, I just want to echo what others have already said, but I agree that you always come to the table with the students in mind, but also advocating for your membership in a way that, shares what the membership needs and how, we as a school committee and administration can support you. As you said, it is unique here in Arlington, the relationship between the union and the school committee and the administration, and I think it's because of that many great things have happened over your tenure.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And everybody's said it all, but I'm at least present in the room, the newest member of the school committee. We have Ms. Haynes-Kapethorn on Zoom, and so this is just what I've known as a school committee member, and some of us had the opportunity recently, were called by some school committee members in a different district who wanted to know how it works that we have the union president at the table. And I was like, well, it seems to work fine. And it was they were so, I didn't know how unusual that is. I'm a former union leader in a different union. I know how hard the job is. I think that, just echoing what everybody else has said, Arlington is really special, and you and your membership have been such an important part of our recent successes. I don't know how anybody else gets these things done. Dr. Allison Ampe.
Thank you. I won't echo I agree with everything that's been said. I won't repeat it, but I wanted to point out that one of the things that you have brought forward and has made such a difference is your desire to understand how town finances work in Arlington and how we're able to make our ends meet and help convey those ideas to your union. And that's really helped us push forward in terms of being able to pass overrides and to kind of find the balance between what we feel is a reasonable amount for the town to afford and not going too far the other way, even though we'd like to be able to pay you folks even more than we can. So thanks again for everything you've been doing.
And I'll just say it was nice to be the rookie at the end of the table there, having a friendly face, and certainly you're hilarious, by the way. So it was just really nice. And I also, as the the spouse of a teacher, we know how important that advocacy piece of the teachers union is and what the benefits that has in households. So, just really grateful for your partnership and the fact that we can get so much done because of it. So thank you. Congratulations. Enjoy your Thursday night.
Thank you. We've done a lot, like just COVID and all of that, but also like, hey, fair share amendment. Oh, I did that. Like that was out there getting the signatures, getting the signs, and like we've done a lot of really good stuff for our schools, both in town and in the state, and just in our tiny little communities. So we're in a good place.
Okay, Laura.
Mr. Sweet.
I just want to add from my perspective, it's great to have a partner from my role, have a union leadership partnership that we have in Arlington that I can call Julie and ask questions. We can sort of run things by each other when we're not sure. And you've been a great partner for me and other administrators. I know the principals feel similarly, and you've been able to have really productive meetings that help our staff.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Now cake?
Cake.
Now, okay. Do we want to go?
So I was going to say, how we need to adjourn to executive session, and we will need to come back, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that creates a bit of a natural break because it usually
Yeah.
takes a couple minutes to get
Yeah.
people out.
So I am requesting a motion to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman,
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman,
Yes.
Ms. Exton.
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Copthorne,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you. So we are adjourned, and we will come back.
We're not. We're coming back to adjourn. We're going
We
into
are
executive
adjourned.
session
We are
now.
going into executive session, but we will be
Yes.
coming back for those at home who want to see
Yes.
what
Yes.
happens. So we've returned from executive session. Dr. Homan, did you want to
Yes.
introduce what we are voting on?
Yes. So it is my pleasure tonight to recommend a contract extension for Dr. Mona Ford Walker, who has served as the Deputy Superintendent of the Arlington Public Schools for the past 3 years. Tonight is also a bittersweet moment for me because Dr. Ford Walker informed me and the school committee that the 2026-27 school year will be her final year with APS because she's interested in pursuing other professional opportunities after next school year. Therefore, the agreement before the committee for your consideration and vote tonight is a 1-year agreement for the upcoming 2026-27 school year. Before I say more about the agreement, I want to say a few words about Dr. Ford Walker's tenure in Arlington. Her first year was also the first year of the implementation of our strategic plan. And even though she didn't build the plan with us, she's been a faithful steward of the initiatives in Priority 1, which has contained the most critical transformation work that APS needed to do as we emerge from the pandemic, as well as Priority 2, which has been focused on ensuring that our staff feel valued and are provided the professional learning that they need to implement our objectives. From before her first day, Mona demonstrated a deep commitment to an understanding of Arlington's direction and strategic work. Under her leadership, our students and programs have thrived, and it shows in the programming itself and in our student outcomes. Mona immediately took command of our elementary curriculum rollout in ELA, including the implementation of comprehensive and transparent literacy assessments and screening. Her leadership transformed our approach to professional learning to support the new curriculum in response to teacher feedback, and her team moved the rollout along ahead of schedule. When families came to us with concerns about math placement and pathways, which we talked about earlier tonight, she guided our teams and a new director through difficult conversations with patients and care for all involved parties. And while that work is continuing, her leadership has provided more students with more access to content that motivates and engages their interests. Dr. Ford Walker has hired or onboarded the vast majority of our current curriculum team, who is excellent. And their collaborations with principals have not only improved, but flourished over the past few years. She's brought new partnerships and a sharp instructional focus to her work in APS, and it is undeniable her impact in 3 short years has been quite immense. She's also been my thought partner, my sounding board, and at times my co-teacher, and I couldn't have asked for a partner whose instructional vision so closely matched my own. As aligned as we have always been, I've also been grateful to learn a lot from Mona. She has modeled for me several new ways to go about the work of empowering leaders, teachers, and students. Her unassuming and measured approach to leadership is careful, thoughtful, and planful, which is why her occasional practical jokes, if you're lucky enough to be subjected to one, are both effective and hilarious. But her planful approach is also why she gets results for kids and families, why the programming she has led has built efficacy over time, and why the leaders she supervises are able to confidently show off their skill and expertise. And I can only hope she's learned as much working with us as we've learned from her over the past 3 years. I'm beyond grateful that she's giving us the opportunity to carefully consider our next steps for teaching and learning in APS, and relieved we can head into next year with her capable leadership in place through the transition. And that brings me to a few details about this agreement. It includes our standards benefits package for 3-year assistant superintendent contracts, as well as a retention incentive as a show of gratitude for the additional time Dr. Ford Walker is giving us to conduct a search and onboard a new leader. Had Dr. Ford Walker asked for it, I would have recommended a 3-year agreement to the committee. However, I'm a strong believer that in order for students to thrive, the people teaching and leading them need to be thriving in our organization as well. For that reason, I respect the deputy superintendent's decision to pursue other opportunities. I appreciate her transparency and honesty with me and the rest of the Arlington community, and I wish her the best of luck in finding a new professional home where she will bring her unique expertise to the work of educating children, which has had such a positive impact here in Arlington. I'd like to thank Dr. Ford Walker for her service for the past 3 years and the year ahead, which we're confident will be our best yet, and respectfully request the committee's approval of this agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee has, and just want to note that Dr. Ford Walker was planning to be at this last meeting, but we moved it because of a couple other moving parts, and she had other family commitments today. Otherwise, she would have been here. I shared those remarks with her earlier today, and she wanted to express her gratitude to the committee for the time that she has had here. Said it's been very rewarding. She has learned a lot, and she's looking forward to whatever the next chapter is, but is fully committed to APS during the time that she's here.
Yeah, I want to say that Dr. Ford Walker has been an outstanding deputy, and not only has she grown in the role and developed a bunch of skills, she's also fostered growth among everybody she interacts with. She's been an outstanding leader, and I can understand her wanting to move forward with her career, and wherever she ends up is going to be blessed by being able to have her in their employ. I'd like to move approval of the contract and authorize who signs this one? Is this just the superintendent?
I can sign
Okay.
if authorized.
Move approval of the contract.
Second?
Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman.
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman,
Yes.
Ms. Exton,
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Coppathorn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
Thank you. That's all we have tonight.
So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
Mr. Cardin,
Yes.
Mr. Thielman,
Yes.
Mr. Schlichtman,
Yes.
Ms. Exton,
Yes.
Dr. Allison Ampe,
Yes.
Ms. Haynes Coppathorn,
Yeah.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you. We are adjourned.